Joining me today from the Department of Vague Trade Consumer Protection, I call him DATCP. We got Laura Sutherland here. Laura, welcome back to the show. How are you doing today?
I'm good, Jeremy. How are you?
I'm fired up. October is Cybersecurity Awareness Month, and it's a great time to talk about a lot of great ways of staying protected when it comes to cybersecurity, which every single day we are surrounded with different technologies and passwords, and it's just a different era now, even compared to when I started this job in 2010. Things have changed drastically. So this month, this year, what are you telling people?
You're right. Things have changed drastically, and particularly with Cybersecurity Awareness Month. We've been doing this since 2004, right? Think about where we were in 2004 with respect to cybersecurity and where we are now. So in 2022, the theme is See Yourself in Cyber. And we're asking people nationally, we're asking people and individuals and organizations to recognize their roles in digital spaces that they utilize in their daily life. So cybersecurity sounds like a really complex subject, but at the end of the day, it's really just about people. And there's some simple steps that all of us can take as individuals and organizations to keep ourselves safer online. So,
yeah. So let's jump into the device software and operating systems. One that we've talked about, again and again and again, but I think there was a number way back when where it was like, maybe you shouldn't update for the latest thing because it could be bad. That is completely the opposite now.
No, look, these folks that are running the software or running these systems, they're checking all the time for glitches, for bugs, for weaknesses that hackers can exploit. Who knows better than they do what's wrong with the software that we're using and the operating systems that we're using? So if they're telling you, you know what, you need to update your system, you need to do it. Absolutely. Now, I think there was a time when people didn't like to do it because maybe it changed the font size or that particular, feature that you really liked. My position on that is get over it, move with the times, because what's more important, being exploited by a hacker or having that great font size that you wanted or whatever? Absolutely always update them.
Yeah.
The other thing we talk about all the time, Jeremy, I'm sure you can finish my sentence, is passwords, right?
It's something that is, everything has a password now. And I think what happens is you become complacent because you're just dealt with so many things. It's just easier to remember these things, by having one password for everything. But that could not be more false and more wrong to do these days. So there are ways of making it easier, but overall, why should we be on the forefront of this and change them?
Well, because look, once one entity has a breach and your password is breached, folks online, hackers, these sophisticated groups, collect this data, and they look for those of us who use the same password for our social media accounts and our pet finder and our financial institution, right? So maybe our pet finder is not as secure, but we've used the same password, and lo and behold, hackers who are collecting data on us can use that password to get into some of the more important things in our life, like our financial institutions. So absolutely don't use the same password. Don't use the same types of passwords. But what you can use is passphrases. And this is a place that people have sort of changed back and forth about what you do about passwords. Passphrases is a relatively new recommendation, and it allows us to be able to remember things. But then you just change a couple aspects of the password to make it hard for hackers to get. So what do I mean by that? One example is blue dogs walk fast. Maybe that's your catchphrase. You change the O in dog to a 0. You change the A to an ampersand. You change the L to a number 1. And you end it with an exclamation point. You're off to the races. Really hard to hack something like that. So that's what we're suggesting folks do. But the other thing people can do is use a password manager that feeds you these passwords, and you don't have to bother with it. That costs you some money. It's a little more sophisticated, but it's something that can make your life a little bit easier and more secure at the same time.
Yeah, and they are definitely safer than maybe when they first came out. I mean, it would be hard to say, I'm going to sign into something that has all my passwords, so I remember to sign into something. It just doesn't sound right, but but you're right in the sense that there's just so many different password things, and you want to stay protected. Check into those services. There are legit services. And as you and everybody part of your staff would always say, is do your homework when you're picking out those password protecting sites. Enable multi-factor authentication. The last couple of years, this has grown, and I think it's the greatest thing to happen to keeping us all safe.
Absolutely. And, most of us have not been able to avoid it because a lot of entities and organizations are requiring that we use multi-factor authentication. So absolutely, where it's optional, I would encourage you to do it. It's really simple to use. And that extra step only takes a few seconds, but it really makes it impossible for hackers, phishers, and cyber criminals to get at your passwords and your accounts. So if you have the ability to use MFA, multi-factor authentication, you should absolutely do it.
Yeah, I think it's, like I said, I think it's the greatest thing since sliced bread. And yeah, y'all need to get on board with it for sure. Finally, recognizing phishing attempts. I hate phishing the scammers, but I love fishing, throw it into the Wisconsin water. But this is something that is seriously out of control at so many different levels. And it is so hard to really navigate through all of this because you're hit with this stuff all the time.
You are. And it's really can be life altering if you fall victim. In fact, we just had a complaint this week of an individual who got a phishing attempt, and they were parted with 6 figures of money because they stayed on line with this hacker and ended up being convinced that they were the real entity that they usually worked with and lost a lot of money. So what does this mean? Phishing typically it's spelled with a PH, and it refers to a cyber criminal that is using email or text to lure you in. And there's this aspect of there's something about the text that may look familiar to you, so you would trust it. It comes from your mortgage broker, it comes from your boss or your HR department or what have you, and then it often has a link that you should absolutely never click, or it has a phone number that you should absolutely never call. But those are the ways in which they lure you in. They can send these emails out en masse, so it only takes a couple fish on the line and they're off to the races. So absolutely unsolicited emails and texts that ask for information for you to engage with them, to confirm information, to click on a link, to call them back, ignore it. If there's anything at all about the email or text that you think is legitimate, use a phone number or contact information that you know that you can trust. So by that, I mean, if you get an email from the IRS that you think is legitimate, close that browser, open a new one, go to the IRS's website, use their 800 number and call them and say, are you trying to contact me? My guess is they're not. But in any event, never use the information that comes in your inbox. It's almost always a scam.
Yeah, and like I said, it's very frustrating, but these are the times that we live in. Technology has expanded and it's making our lives easier, but it came with different ways of scamming people. And I guess at the end of the day, and the big question I wanted to get to you is, when we're looking at cybersecurity, what is DATCP doing month to month, day to day, to try and, again, keep this information flowing and keep everybody safe when it's just nonstop?
Right. Well, let me tell you a couple things. First of all, we do things like this. We do a lot of outreach. We do trainings. We have outreach specialists that go to libraries, schools, colleges, community events, fairs, you name it. And they talk about these scams and ways in which you can keep yourself safe. The other thing we do is when we hear about a scam. So anytime there's a new government program that comes out, it's not uncommon that a scam hit, that our complaint numbers start going up. We send out alerts. If it's in a targeted community, oftentimes it is, we'll target that community and say, there's this happening in your community, get the word out. So that's what we do. We also have an 800 number, a hotline that is staffed by consumer protection experts that can answer questions for you. If you think it may be a scam, the company that you're dealing with, they can help you look into it. If you've already been victim of a scam, they can help you repair your identity and perhaps work with a financial institution if you've lost some money. And we have mediators and we have investigators that can investigate. So if they're here in Wisconsin or they're identifiable folks, we can try to run them down and address it. So we have day-to-day, loads and loads of complaints that come into our hotline. We talk to people all the time about how to navigate these issues and keep themselves safe, and where they've become victim of a fraud, try to help them resolve that.
Yeah, I appreciate the information and knowing that what's happening behind the scenes, for you folks, you're doing it and battling it every day for us. And we really appreciate it. And yeah, good time to take a look at ourselves and practice some good cybersecurity, among other things, during this Cybersecurity Awareness Month. Laura, thank you so much for your time. I appreciate it. We'll catch back up with you next month.
Great. Thanks for having me, Jeremy.